On the last day before my study abroad application closed, I was about to give up my full scholarship offer. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my future self. Don't give it up. Click confirm enrollment. Right now. Harley locked in his own graduate placement 3 months ago. The only reason he wants you to stay is that Katy needs you to finish her senior thesis for her, and he needs your money every month to live on. 2 weeks after you turn down that offer, the two of them go public with their relationship. That so-called best friend of yours, Katy? She already betrayed you. She's been sleeping with him. I froze, my finger hovering over the mouse. The voice kept going, speaking faster and faster. Listen carefully. Once you confirm the offer, take the $20,000 left in your account and put every cent into the Eklund Growth Fund. It goes public next March. It'll grow 8-fold within the year. Once you're abroad, apply to your advisor's AI lab before your first semester ends. That project gets acquired by Google 2 years from now, and as a core team member, you'll get a share of the payout. 22-year-old me, I'm begging you. Stop wasting yourself on people who don't deserve it. The voice cut off. I took a deep breath and moved the cursor to confirm enrollment. The instant I clicked, my mind was made up. I wasn't going to bury my own future for anyone who wasn't worth it. The instant I clicked the mouse, every ounce of strength drained out of me, and I sank back into my chair. A confirmation window popped up on the screen. Congratulations. Your full scholarship offer from the University of Lynchburg has been confirmed. I stared at that line for a full 3 minutes. My phone screen lit up. It was a message from Harley McGowan. Harley, babe, did you pay the rent this month? Harley, my account's dry. Send me $3,000 for now, just to cover it. A clingy little sticker followed, the kind he always sent when he wanted something. The old me would have opened the transfer screen the second I saw that message, no questions asked. Half of everything I earned tutoring on the side went to his rent, the other half to his clothes and dinners. I'd thought we were building something together, that he was just stressed about his grad school exams and needed me to hold things up. But my future self had told me the truth. He'd already secured his own placement 3 months ago. He didn't need the money at all. What he needed was someone to bleed dry. I marked the message as read and didn't answer. Then I opened my investment app and set up an automatic deposit for the $21,000 left in my account. Once the Eklund Growth Fund went public next March, I was going all in. My phone buzzed. A voice message from Harley, 40 seconds long. I tapped it open. His voice came through lazy and self-assured, the way it always was when he thought the world owed him something. Why aren't you answering? Holed up in the library again? Don't work yourself too hard, okay? I booked us a table tonight, somewhere nice. You can front the bill for now. I killed the message and let out a short, humorless laugh. Wonderful. Even taking me out to dinner meant I paid. I typed back one word. Busy. 10 seconds later, he called. What's gotten into you, Anita? Harley said, laughing, still wearing that same practiced gentleness. I know you've been stressed lately, but forget about studying abroad, all right? We already agreed. You're staying to study for your grad exams, and next year we do this together. Got it. I cut him off, my voice flat, without a single ripple in it. He paused, clearly not expecting me to be so curt, then said, hesitant, so the money. Later. I hung up. Not because I wasn't going to send it. Because I was never sending it. Ever. Less than 20 minutes later, a message from Katy Kerman popped up. Katy, Anita, my thesis model won't run. Can you take a look? Katy, just a small piece of code, it'll be quick. Please, please. A string of crying face stickers and folded hands emojis followed. I stared at the screen, remembering what my future self had said. Katy needs you to finish her senior thesis for her. Not help her look over one piece of code. The entire thesis, from proposal to defense, I was the one doing it. And the time she'd freed up doing that, she'd spent sleeping with my boyfriend. I took a deep breath and typed. I've been swamped lately. You should ask your advisor. There was silence on the other end for a long time. Finally, she sent a single, okay, with no emoji attached. I knew she was upset. But I knew even better that it wasn't because I'd refused to help. It was because she was scared her thesis wouldn't get finished, that she wouldn't graduate on time, that she wouldn't get to run off into her happy future with Harley. I set my phone face down on the desk and opened the course guide for the University of Lynchburg. The AI lab. I could apply before my first semester even ended. It would be acquired by Google 2 years later. My life, starting this very second, belonged to no one but me. 3 days after I turned Katy down, she suddenly asked me out to dinner. She picked Bellini's, the little bistro on the street behind campus, the place we'd been going since freshman year. By the time I got there, Katy was already seated in a booth, makeup done just right, smiling and waving me over. "Anita. Over here, over here." I sat down. She slid the menu over to me immediately, fussing over me in a way that felt almost excessive. "My treat today. Order whatever you want." I raised an eyebrow and said nothing, just picked 2 dishes at random. We made small talk for 5 minutes before she finally got to the point. "Anita, I really can't handle my senior thesis." She set down her fork, her eyes rimmed faintly red. "You know my coding is weak, and my advisor's on my case constantly. If I don't graduate on time, my mother will kill me." She reached out and gripped my wrist, the pressure calculated just right, somewhere between affection and pleading. "Just help me this one last time, okay? I'll take you out for a big dinner once I graduate. I mean it." I looked into her eyes. There was weakness there, and flattery, and even a trace of certainty she couldn't quite hide. She was certain I'd say yes. Because I never had said no to her. Not once. From saving her a seat freshman year, to writing her lab reports, to editing her papers, all the way to carrying her senior thesis. I was her most reliable tool. "Katy." I pulled my wrist back, my voice even. "I really don't have the time." The smile on her face froze. "What have you been so busy with lately?" "Getting some things of my own in order." Something flickered in her eyes, like she was trying to gauge what I meant. Then she recovered that fragile, soft look and smiled. "All right. I'll figure something else out, then." We went our separate ways after dinner. At the fork in the road, I caught her out of the corner of my eye pulling out her phone and dialing someone in a hurry. Her back was to me, her voice pitched low, but the night wind carried a few fragments over. "She's not right lately, she won't help me anymore, what am I supposed to do?" I didn't turn around. I didn't stop walking, either. I didn't need to guess who was on the other end of that call. Sure enough, that night, Harley texted, his tone 10 times gentler than usual. "Harley, babe, are you not feeling great lately? Want me to take you out this weekend?" Harley, "Oh, by the way, Katy said she's stuck on her thesis. If you've got a minute, help her take a look, would you?" "It's nothing, really." I stared at the words nothing, really, and nearly laughed out loud. An entire senior thesis, and he called that nothing. Of course it sounded easy to him. It always did, for things he never had to lift a finger for himself. I sent back one word, busy. He replied instantly. "Busy with what? Didn't you say you weren't going abroad anymore? It's way too early to be studying for grad exams." I didn't answer again. He sent 3 more messages in a row, his tone sliding from gentle to irritated. "Harley, Anita. Harley, what's with the attitude? Harley, I'm talking to you nicely here. Can you not be so passive-aggressive?" I put my phone on silent, opened my laptop, and went back to researching the application materials for the AI lab at Ellensburg. The professor's research focus happened to be natural language processing. My future self had been right about that, too. That lab would catch Kugel's eye 2 years from now. All I had to do was get myself into it before the end of my first semester. As for Harley and Katy, they could help each other if they wanted to. Friday night, my roommate dragged me to a graduation season get-together. Come on, it's our last one ever. If you don't go now, you might never see half these people again." I'd meant to say no, but then I reconsidered. Fine. I'd treat it as a goodbye. The party was at a karaoke lounge next to campus, a big private room, more than 20 people packed in. By the time I arrived, Harley and Katy were already sitting together. There was 1 seat of distance between them, which looked normal enough on the surface. But I noticed the way Katy's elbow kept brushing his arm, and the way his body leaned toward her without him seeming to notice. Details like that, the old me would have looked right past. Now, every one of them felt like a crack in the surface. Someone suggested a round of truth or dare. The bottle spun, and the mood kept climbing. On the 3rd round, it landed on Katy. "Truth or dare?" "Dare," Katy said with a giggle. Whoever had proposed the round was already a few drinks in, and he shouted it loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Dare. Hug whoever you like best right now." The room erupted into hooting and cheering. Katy's face went red. She hesitated for 2 seconds, then stood and walked toward Harley. She came at him from behind and wrapped her arms around his neck, her whole body hanging off him, her voice syrupy. "Ugh, don't blame me, you guys made me do it." The room froze for a second, and then the cheering exploded. No way. Katy and Harley? Seriously? Since when? Wait, isn't Harley dating Anita? What about Anita? Every head in the room turned toward me. The color drained from Harley's face. He shoved Katy off him and looked at me on instinct, his lips moving. Anita, it's not what you think. Katy stumbled back a step, her eyes welling up instantly, standing there looking helpless. I'm sorry, I had too much to drink. I watched the whole scene unfold, something ugly churning in my chest. Even knowing the truth already, seeing it play out in front of me still turned my stomach. 4 years. I'd given Harley my best 4 years, and this was what I got for it. Humiliated in front of everyone. I set down my glass, stood up sharply, and grabbed my jacket. Anita. Harley rushed over and grabbed my wrist. Let me explain. I wrenched my arm away, with a strength that surprised even me. Don't touch me. My voice was shaking, not from sadness. From fury. I glanced at Katy once. She was gazing back at me with those tear-filled eyes, pitiful and wounded, her lips parted like she might start crying any second for sympathy. Disgusting. I turned and walked out of the room. The second I shoved the door open, dead silence fell behind me, followed immediately by an explosion of whispers. In the hallway, I heard Harley's footsteps chasing after me. Anita, stop right there. Harley caught up to me, grabbed my shoulder, and spun me around. His face was a mix of panic and anger. What's your problem? Embarrassing me like that in front of everyone? I shook his hand off and stepped back, staring at him coldly. Harley, do you even understand what just happened? You and my best friend hugged, and you're the one storming out to interrogate me? That was truth or dare. It was just a game, he said through gritted teeth. Can you not blow this so far out of proportion? A game? I let out a cold laugh. Was your face going white when you shoved her off? You also part of the game? That caught him off guard. His chest heaved for a long moment before he managed to force out, Anita, what's actually going on with you lately? You won't help Katy, you won't send money, you won't answer my texts, and now you're picking a fight over nothing. Are you doing this on purpose? I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, studying his flushed face. This was the face that had made my heart race for 4 straight years. Now, all I felt looking at it was revulsion. Harley, let me ask you something. Go ahead. Did you already secure your graduate placement 3 months ago? His expression froze, plain as day. His lips moved, but nothing came out. I kept going. And after that, you still asked me for living expenses. $3,000 a month, like clockwork. What did you spend my money on? Taking Katy to dinner? Booking hotel rooms? You. What are you talking about? His voice shot up, but his eyes had already started darting away. I didn't bother going in circles with him anymore. I straightened up and looked down at him. Let's break up. Harley froze for a second, then suddenly laughed. There was a contempt in that laugh I'd never seen on him before. Break up? Fine by me. He stepped back, hands in his pockets, tilting his head to look at me. You really think if you dump me, you'll end up doing better than I do? You've got zero backbone, you'll probably fail your grad exams anyway. What do you even have to compare yourself to me with? He was getting more pleased with himself the longer he talked, like he'd finally stopped bothering to pretend. Be honest, Anita, what are you even good for besides writing other people's code? You couldn't even hold on to an offer. What gives you the right to act all high and mighty in front of me? I cut him off without missing a beat. Harley, who told you I didn't accept the offer? Harley's face drained of color so fast it looked like he had seen a ghost. What did you just say? He stammered, his fingers tightening on his pockets. I said, who told you I didn't accept the offer? I kept my voice cold, steady, and loud enough for a couple leaving the karaoke lounge behind us to turn and look. I accepted it 3 hours ago. Full scholarship. University of Ellensburg. I leave in 6 weeks. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The arrogant posture he'd maintained for years shattered into complete disbelief. You lied to me? No, Harley. You lied to me, I said, leaning closer so he could hear every syllable. You lied about your placement. You lied about your finances. You lied about Katy. You spent 3 months taking my money while telling me to sacrifice my education so I could stay here and nurse your fragile ego. Anita, wait. Don't ever contact me again. I turned on my heel and walked out of the lounge, out into the cool night air. My phone immediately began blowing up with calls and notifications. First, Harley, 5 times in a row. Then Katy, sending frantic paragraphs about how it was all a big misunderstanding and that she loved me like a sister. I didn't block them right away. Instead, I opened up my banking app, pulled up 4 months of bank statements showing regular transfers to Harley's account, labeled rent and living expenses, and took crisp screenshots. Then I opened my shared university drive, revoked Katy's access to every single one of my code repositories, research documents, and project outlines, and deleted the temporary folder where I had previously stored her draft notes. If she wanted a senior thesis, she was going to have to write it herself. When I got back to my dorm, my roommate, Chloe, was sitting on her bed, looking at her phone in disbelief. "Anita," she gasped, looking up as I walked in. "The group chat is losing its mind. Katy's crying in the bathroom at the lounge, and Harley just slammed out of the building." "What happened?" "I broke up with him," I said calmly, opening my closet and pulling out my suitcase. "And I confirmed my offer at Lynchburg." Chloe's jaw dropped. "Wait, really? But Katy told everyone weeks ago that you were dropping out of the application process to stay with Harley." "Katy told you what suited her," I replied, tossing a stack of notebooks into the bag. "I'm moving into temporary off-campus housing for my final month here. I need to focus." The next morning, I visited the university financial office and submitted a formal request for rent dispute documentation regarding off-campus student housing shared with Harley. I didn't care about getting every dollar back, I cared about leaving an official administrative paper trail proving he had been claiming financial support from a fellow student while secretly receiving a full departmental graduate stipend. By noon, the rumors on campus had taken a violent shift. Katy had tried to show up at my usual study spot in the library, her eyes red and puffy, clearly hoping to stage a public reconciliation. But when she saw me sitting at a table surrounded by my project team, she stopped dead. "Anita, please," she whispered, stepping closer, holding a laptop to her chest. "My advisor just called a surprise review for Monday morning. The algorithm model, it's returning 0 errors, but no output." "I don't understand." "The script. Can you just fix the execution loop? It'll take you 5 minutes." I didn't even look up from my screen. "I don't work for free anymore, Katy. And I certainly don't write theses for people who sleep with my boyfriend." The library floor was dead silent. 2 lab assistants at the next table snapped their heads up. Katy's face burned a deep, furious crimson. I didn't," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. "For real this time." "Ask Harley," I said, my voice echoing off the high stone walls. "He's the one with the secure graduate placement and plenty of free time." "Oh, wait, he doesn't know how to code in Python, does he? You two really are made for each other." Katy turned and ran out of the library, sobbing loudly. She had spent 4 years relying on my brain to cover up her incompetence. Now, with the deadline 5 days away, she was standing on the edge of a cliff without a safety net. 2 weeks later, the campus was buzzing with news of the senior thesis reviews. Katy's defense was a total disaster. Without access to my repositories or my custom-built debugging scripts, she presented a broken, half-copied machine learning model that failed to run live during her committee evaluation. When her advisor pressed her on basic architecture choices, she froze, broke down in tears, and tried to claim her hard drive had been corrupted. The committee didn't buy it. Her graduation was officially delayed by a full year, pending an academic review for failing to meet core department requirements. Meanwhile, Harley's grand plan began to unravel just as rapidly. Because I had formally submitted financial documentation to the university Housing and Department Ethics Board, questions arose regarding his graduate placement stipend. It turned out he had been pocketing his stipend while claiming to his advisor that he had severe personal financial hardship, using my transfers to fund expensive dinners, imported clothes, and hotel rooms for him and Katy. When his advisor discovered that Harley had also taken credit for a data analytics script I had written for him during our junior year, a script he had included in his graduate application portfolio, his placement was placed under emergency academic audit. While their lives crumbled around them, I spent my days locked in my room, preparing my investment portfolio. Following the exact instructions of my future self, I authorized the transfer of every single dollar I possessed, $21,400, accumulated from years of high-end tutoring, merit awards, and relentless saving, into the pre-market registration For the Eklund Growth Fund. My financial advisor at the bank nearly refused to execute the transfer. Miss Vance, this is extremely high risk, he warned, staring at his screen in disbelief. Eklund is an unproven tech infrastructure fund focused on European data center expansions. You're putting 100% of your liquid capital into a single unlisted vehicle. If this fund fails to launch in March, you won't have a safety net. Execute it, I said without hesitation. Are you absolutely certain? Every cent. He signed the authorization order. The money vanished from my account, leaving me with barely $600 in cash for my plane ticket and basic expenses. Most people would have panicked. I felt lighter than I had in years. On my final night before flying to Scotland, Harley and Katy officially went public with their relationship. Just like my future self had warned me. Katy posted a photo of them at a local diner, holding hands over cheap coffee. With a caption meant to sound resilient, through the storm, finding light with the one who truly stays. It was a desperate attempt to frame their betrayal as a tragic romance against an unforgiving world. But the comments section under her post was a ghost town. Nobody in our major was buying the tragic hero routine. Everyone knew Katy had botched her degree, Harley was under investigation, and the girl who used to pay their bills was sitting on a flight to Europe. I didn't leave a comment. I didn't even like the post. I took out my SIM card, snapped it in half, and dropped it into the airport trash bin before stepping onto the jet bridge toward Elinsburg. The rain in Elinsburg fell in long, silver sheets against the Gothic stone buildings of the university. While other international students spent their first week sightseeing, going to orientation mixers, and settling into dorm life, I moved with single-minded precision. My target was Professor Julian Vance, no relation to me, despite the shared surname, head of the university's Advanced Natural Language Processing and Neural Architecture Laboratory. The lab was infamous for being nearly impossible to break into. Professor Vance was a ruthless pragmatist who turned down postdocs and PhD candidates alike if he felt their mathematical foundation was weak. His research team was working on low-latency, cross-lingual context processing, a niche field that most tech giants weren't paying attention to yet, but which would become the holy grail of modern AI architectures within 2 years. In my second week on campus, I showed up at Vance's office hours. He didn't even look up from his desk when I walked in. If you're here to ask for an extension on the baseline machine learning assignment, the answer is no. I'm not in your introductory class, Professor, I said, placing a bound 15-page paper onto his desk. I'm here to offer a solution to the context decay issue in your team's published paper from last quarter. Vance stopped typing. Slowly, he looked up through his thin-rimmed glasses, his eyes sharp and dismissive. Context decay in transformer networks is an open research problem across the entire industry, Miss Anita, I said. And the problem isn't the attention mechanism. It's the positional encoding scheme you use for multi-layered contextual inputs. You're losing precision after 8,000 tokens because your decay factor is linear instead of logarithmic. Vance stared at me for 5 long seconds. Then he picked up the paper, flipped to page 4 where I had written out the mathematical proof and sample Python implementation, and began reading. 10 minutes passed in complete silence. The only sound was the tapping of rain against the window pane. Finally, Vance closed the paper, leaned back in his leather chair, and looked at me with genuine interest for the first time. Who wrote this code? I did. Where did you study your undergraduate baseline? A state school you've never heard of, I replied coolly. I spent my time doing other people's work there. Now I'm doing my own. Vance tapped his desk with a pen. Our lab doesn't hire first semester masters students. It breaks department protocol. Then don't hire me as a paid fellow, I said, stepping closer. Give me an unpaid desk in the corner, a terminal connected to your cluster, and 2 weeks. If my algorithm doesn't reduce your model's processing overhead by 30%, you can throw me out. Vance smirked. 30%? You're setting yourself up to look foolish. Anita. Try me. He pointed to the door. Desk 4 in the back room. The login credentials are on the whiteboard. Don't touch the main server stack until you've cleared your code through my senior fellow. I walked out of his office with my pulse racing. Step 3 was complete. I was in the lab before my first semester ended. March arrived with blinding speed, bringing frozen winds off the North Sea, and the moment I had been waiting for since the mysterious phone call. On March 14th, the Eklund Growth Fund went public on the international exchange. I was sitting in the lab backroom late at night, surrounded by humming server racks, when my laptop screen flashed with a financial market alert. The Eklund Fund hadn't just listed, it had executed a massive institutional buyout agreement with a Scandinavian energy grid provider that relied on its proprietary data center cooling architecture. The stock opened at $12 per share. By the end of trading day 1, it was at $48. By the end of the week, following an unprecedented surge of institutional buying, it hit $96 per share. My initial investment of $21,400 had exploded. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling slightly as I hit refresh. Total portfolio value, $171,200. Eightfold growth. Exactly as my future self had predicted down to the month. I sat back in my chair, a quiet laugh escaping my lips. For the first time in my life, I had absolute financial freedom. I wasn't living meal to meal, tutoring lazy undergrads, or worrying about how to stretch a tiny bank balance to cover someone else's rent. I immediately liquidated half the position, locking in $85,000 in cash, and reinvested the remainder into a diversified index fund and early-stage AI infrastructure hardware stocks. While my financial life was transformed overnight, back home, the consequences of Harley and Katy's choices had matured into a full-blown nightmare. Through a mutual acquaintance from my old university who sent me a long email update, I learned the full story. Harley's academic audit had ended badly. The University Ethics Committee concluded that he had engaged in structural academic dishonesty by submitting work created by another student, me, to secure his graduate placement. His stipend was revoked, and his graduate advisor dropped him from the research group. Unable to afford his apartment without my money or his stipend, he was forced to drop out of the master's program entirely and take an entry-level technical support job at a local logistics firm, working 12-hour night shifts. Katy wasn't faring any better. Forced to repeat her senior year, she was taking remedial computer science courses surrounded by freshmen who knew her reputation as the girl who got caught trying to fake her thesis. Without my work to ride on, her academic charm had evaporated. The easy life she had envisioned, living in a nice apartment with Harley while pretending to be a brilliant young scholar, had crumbled into bitter arguments, unpaid bills, and shared resentment. They were still together, but not out of love. They were trapped together by shared isolation. Nobody else on campus wanted anything to do with them. I closed the email, deleted the thread, and went back to my terminal. Their misery was a background detail. My real work was just beginning. Over the next 18 months, Professor Vance's laboratory morphed from a quiet academic research unit into the hottest engineering hub in Western Europe. Our project, codenamed Prism AI, was a revolutionary cross-lingual context engine. It allowed small, low-power large language models to process complex, multi-layered data streams in real time across 30 languages simultaneously, without dropping logical coherence. I worked 18 hours a day. I refined the core matrix multiplication routines, authored 4 foundational patents for the university, and eventually rose to become the lead systems architect of the project. Where I had once poured my intellect into writing essays and code for a boy who used me, I now poured it into a system that was reshaping the boundaries of computer science. Professor Vance noticed. When we officially spun Prism AI out as a university-backed startup in our second year, he sat me down in his office. Anita, the university normally retains 60% of equity in spin-out ventures, Vance said, sliding a thick legal document across the table. I have reserved 20% for myself as principal investigator. The remaining 20% was supposed to be divided among the 7 postdocs on the team. He handed me a pen. I've restructured the cap table. You get 12%. The postdocs share 8. I looked at him in surprise. Professor, they've been here longer than I have. They write standard code, Anita, Vance said sharply. You built the engine. Without your logarithmic decay architecture, this project is just another academic toy. You are the core of this team. If anyone tries to buy us out, I want you sitting at the head of the negotiation table with me. I signed the contract. 12% equity in Prism AI. The countdown from my future self's voice rang in my ears. That project gets Acquired by Google 2 years from now, and as a core team member, you'll get a share of the payout. The 2-year mark was approaching. And right on schedule, the corporate suits began to arrive. First came soft inquiries from European tech conglomerates. Then venture capital firms from London and Berlin. But Vance and I turned them all down. We waited. In November of my second year, a sleek black town car pulled up outside the computer science building. 3 executives from Google's global AI acquisition division, dressed in tailored charcoal suits, walked into our conference room. The lead negotiator, a formidable woman named Marcus, laid a single folder on the glass table. "We've analyzed your benchmark data, Professor Vance, Miss Vance," Marcus said, leaning forward. "Google wants your cross-lingual architecture integrated into our next-generation enterprise search and cloud infrastructure. We are offering an outright acquisition of Prism AI." Vance glanced at me. I maintained a neutral, unreadable expression. "What is the figure?" Vance asked. Marcus opened the folder. $150 million, cash and stock. Considerations. The entire core team will receive 2-year retention packages at our London research headquarters. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice remained razor-sharp. $165 million, I countered, looking Marcus dead in the eye. And the retention period for core architecture leads must be structured with immediate liquid equity vesting upon close. Marcus stared at me for 3 long seconds, a slow, appreciative smile spreading across her face. "You're a tough negotiator, Miss Vance." "I know what my code is worth," I said. 2 days later, the deal was finalized. The news broke across global tech media like a tidal wave. Google acquires University AI spin-out Prism AI for $165 million. 24-year-old lead engineer Anita Vance secures massive windfall in historic acquisition. At 12% equity, after university carve-outs and legal fees, my payout was staggering, $18.2 million USD, alongside a senior vice president title at Google's advanced research division in London. My story was everywhere. Tech blogs, academic journals, national news outlets, they all featured the young woman who had arrived in Eklund 2 years ago with nothing and had engineered one of the most lucrative acquisitions in European academic history. My bank account was no longer a modest student savings file, it was a fortress managed by a high-net-worth wealth management firm in Zurich. I bought a stunning penthouse overlooking the River Thames, invested heavily in early-stage quantum computing infrastructure, and set up a full scholarship fund at Eklund for women in computational mathematics, with one strict rule: applicants must be sole authors of their work. Back in my home country, the news hit like an earthquake. My former university proudly posted a massive banner across its main website homepage: Alumna Anita Vance leads $165 million tech acquisition. They had conveniently forgotten that 2 years ago, I had been an unrecognized undergrad carrying 2 people's academic loads on my back. It was during this time that Harley tried to make his move. I was sitting in my executive office at Google's London campus, looking out over the skyline, when my assistant walked in. "Miss Vance, there's a gentleman downstairs at security claiming to be a close friend from your undergraduate program. He says it's urgent and personal." "What's his name?" I asked, though I already knew. "Harley McGowan." I picked up my coffee cup, taking a slow sip. "Show him up to the secondary meeting room." When Harley stepped into the glass-walled conference room 10 minutes later, I barely recognized him. The lazy, handsome confidence he had worn like a badge of honor in college was completely gone. He looked thin, weathered, and tired. His suit was off the rack, visibly cheap, and slightly ill-fitting at the shoulders. His posture was slumped, the look of a man who had spent the last 2 years getting crushed under the weight of real life. He stopped in his tracks when he saw me. I was sitting at the head of a mahogany table, wearing a bespoke navy blazer, my hair pulled back, an air of quiet, absolute authority surrounding me. "Anita," he whispered, his voice cracking slightly. "Mr. McGowan," I said smoothly, not bothering to stand up. "You have 5 minutes. I have a board meeting at 3. He flinched at the formality. He took a hesitant step forward, reaching out a hand, but stopped himself when he saw my cool, indifferent eyes. "Anita, I saw the news," he began, his hands trembling slightly. "I came all the way to London. I bought a last-minute flight. I needed to see you. Why? Because I made the biggest mistake of my life, he burst out, his eyes turning frantic. That night, 2 years ago. I was stupid. I was blind. Katy manipulated me, Anita. She was the one who kept pushing between us, she was the one who told me you didn't care about me anymore. I laughed, a light, genuine laugh that seemed to cut him deeper than any insult could have. Harley, you were sleeping with her for months before that night, I said softly. You used my tutoring money to buy her presents. You tried to force me to give up my scholarship so I could keep paying your rent. Katy didn't manipulate you. You were simply a leech who found another leech. We broke up. Harley shouted, taking another desperate step toward the table. I left her 6 months ago. She's working a dead-end office job back home, blaming me for her failed degree. We hate each other, Anita. I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you walked out of that lounge. He dropped his hands onto the table, leaning forward, his eyes full of pathetic hope. You and me, we built everything together back then. I was your motivation. Wasn't I? We can start over. I don't care about the money, I swear. I just want my Anita back. I stood up slowly. The contrast between us couldn't have been starker. He was begging for a lifeline from a past he had destroyed. I was standing in a future he couldn't even comprehend. You don't care about the money? I asked, walking around the table to stand a few feet from him. Harley, you didn't fly across the Atlantic because you loved me. You flew here because you saw $18 million next to my name in the headlines, and you realized that the girl you treated like a piece of garbage turned out to be worth more than you'll ever earn in 10 lifetimes. His face burned with shame, his mouth trembling. You told me 2 years ago that I was good for nothing besides writing other people's code, I continued, my voice calm, razor sharp, and unyielding. You asked me what I had to compare myself to you with. Do you remember that? He swallowed hard, unable to look me in the eye. Look at me, Harley. He slowly raised his head. I am a senior vice president at the largest tech company on earth, I said quietly. I own equity in 3 foundational patents. I have enough wealth to buy the building your logistics firm operates out of and tear it down for fun. And you are standing in my conference room, wearing a cheap suit, begging for scraps. I reached over and pressed the intercom button on the wall. Security, I said into the speaker. Please escort Mr. McGowan out of the building. He is banned from the campus premises. Anita. No. Please. Give me one chance. Harley screamed as 2 heavyset security guards opened the door and grabbed him by the arms. Anita. I turned my back on him, picking up my tablet, and looked out over the London skyline as he was dragged down the hallway, his desperate cries fading into nothingness. I felt no vengeance. No lingering heartbreak. No sadness. All I felt was the profound, beautiful weight of absolute freedom. 6 months later, I was in Paris, attending the International AI Leadership Summit as a keynote speaker. The grand auditorium of the Palais de Congrès was packed with 3,000 people, CEOs, research directors, government ministers, and tech founders from every corner of the globe. I stood on the center stage under the bright spotlights, wearing a crisp ivory suit, delivering my address on the future of decentralized contextual language processing. Every time I paused, the room was dead quiet, hanging on every word I spoke. When I finished, the entire auditorium rose to their feet in a thunderous standing ovation. After the speech, I walked through the VIP lounge, surrounded by guards and event staff, holding a glass of champagne. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from an old university alumni tracker app that I had forgotten to delete. Curious, I opened it. There was a public record update regarding Katy Kerman. She had officially been expelled from the university's academic system after failing her 3rd attempt at the senior thesis retake requirement. Her academic record was permanently flagged for structural dishonesty. The last recorded update showed her working as a part-time receptionist at a local dry cleaning business, bogged down by student debt she couldn't repay. And Harley? After being publicly thrown out of Google's London headquarters, his desperation had led him to try to steal proprietary data from his logistics employer to sell to a corporate competitor. He had been caught, fired, and was currently facing federal corporate fraud charges back home. They had built their lives on deceit, laziness, and taking from others. And when there was no one left to bleed dry, their world simply collapsed under its own weight. I closed the app, locked my phone, and slipped it back into my pocket. I walked out onto the balcony of the Palais de Congrès, looking out over the shimmering lights of Paris at night. The cool evening breeze blew through my hair. My phone rang. An unknown international number flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Anita Vance. For a long moment, there was only static on the line. Then, a voice came through, clear, composed, and faintly familiar, yet mature and refined by years of unbelievable triumphs. 24-year-old me, the voice said with a warm, triumphant smile. You did incredible. I froze, a soft, beautiful smile slowly spreading across my face. I know, I replied softly, looking out at the endless horizon of my life. We both did. The call disconnected. I raised my glass toward the stars, took a sip of champagne, and walked back inside to conquer the rest of the world.